So today I'm going to review trackball mice for gaming, specifically for gaming. And the winner, I like to start with the winner and then work my way up to it, justify it, is, in my opinion, the Ploopy Adept. The Ploopy Adept. And that you can see here, the bottom middle of the screen. This is the Ploopy Adept. It's about $75. It has very high pulling rate and really good dynamic bearings. And the form factor of it is ergonomic and in a way that prevents accidental motion of clicks through to the mouse cursor. And it's ambidextrous. It can go on the left side, the middle, or the right side, depending on your preference. So we'll get to all that in a bit. That's my winner, is the Ploopy Adept. Now, before we build up to why it's the winner, let's discuss what trackball mice you don't want to get. So there are things like the Kensington Slim Blade Pro, and I have the traditional Slim Blade here. You can see this is a very popular mouse. It was my favorite mouse until I discovered the Ploopy Adept. It's the same form factor, you can see. The reason the Adept beat the Slim Blade, in my personal opinion, is these static bearings. So these little nubbins here, these material protrusions, are called static bearings. Static in that the bearings themselves don't move, only the ball across the bearings. And that causes, so if the bearings don't move, you can experience something called stiction. And the way that manifests is you sort of, it's like it's static friction, but it's kind of a cool word too, because it almost implies stickiness, where when you start moving the ball, there's a little bit of a resistance before you start picking up acceleration. Once you're moving it, it's fine. And if you make large sweeping motions, it's great. But these micro precision motions can experience stiction, where it's sticky and you have to apply a little bit more effort than you need to. And when you're really dialing into pixel perfect motions in first person shooters and these kinds of games where precision is super important, that will get in the way. So Slim Blade is a really popular mouse out there. I think the other one, the two most popular trackball mice that people get into when they're exploring trackballs for the first time are the Kensington Slim Blade and the Elecom Huge. We will start with the Huge in this lineup. It is my least favorite of the trackball gaming mice. And the reason it is so bad, in my opinion, is, again, that it has static bearings, just like the Kensington Slim Blade. It has static bearings, and so it has pretty severe stiction. In fact, Elecom, the brand, is fairly notorious for very bad stiction. So they're on the low end of the smoothness factor of all trackball mice. And so why would anybody choose this for gaming whatsoever if it experiences stiction like that? Well, what people do is they replace the bearings. They take the device apart. There's some YouTube videos where you can take the device apart, take out the static bearings, and replace them with dynamic bearings or better ceramic static bearings. It takes a little bit of DIY surgery to do that. So if you're a DIY kind of person, that might be a good option for you. So by replacing the bearings on the Huge, a lot of people find it to be a really good mouse after that. One of the reasons people really like it so much are that it has so many buttons, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the mouse click wheel in. So it has 8 buttons, an enormous ball. I think it's the largest ball kind of in the market as far as trackballs go. Large balls mean higher precision because you can make broader sweeping motions for, like, dial the DPI down and make large sweeping motions to get really high precision clicks. And that the form factor, the physical layout of the device, is one of the most ergonomic that is out there. It's very large. You can see this hand takes the entire device. But you rest your palm on it, and it's just very comfortable and whatnot. But out the gate, it has very bad stiction. You'll see it all over Reddit, in the reviews on Amazon, etc. Very bad stiction, so it is not good for a gaming device. As it stands, you'll have to modify it to replace the bearings to make it good for gaming. So for that reason, I personally rule this one out, but it's popular, so I'm including it in the video. The next one I'll discuss, which I haven't gotten to experience, is the X-Keys L-Trac, people who have this swear by it. They die on that hill. Of the lineup, I would say the people who use the L-Trac are the most diehard fans. They don't understand why people haven't tried this thing. You know, one of the reasons is it's quite expensive, but the main reason I think that they're not popular, the L-Tracs, is they only have 2 buttons. 2. Now in gaming, that's a big deal. You need, you know, I think you need 6 really, 5 or 6. So you only get 2 buttons. It does have these like auxiliary out ports where you can extend the mouse with peripherals, so you can add more buttons. But people say that when they do that, it's really quite awkward. You'll have like a numpad kind of device that sticks out to the right of the mouse, for example, and you have to move your hand away from the primary mouse to click those buttons, and it's not very natural. So I think that's the real Achilles heel of the L-Trac, is that it only has 2 buttons. If you really think you only need 2 buttons, then this is a viable option for you. But really think hard about that. Even outside of gaming, I use 5 buttons in my programming job. Middle click to go into like a function definition, back to go back out of the function definition I just middle clicked into, etc. So I would never use this personally because I think 2 is severely limiting, way too few buttons. However, the people who use this say it has the best sensor with the highest polling rate and the best dynamic bearings on the planet. This is evidently the smoothest mouse you can find. So, but I don't go that route because of the number of buttons. Okay, so before we get to the Adept, it's really a battle between Game Ball and Ploopy Classic. Ploopy Classic. So Game Ball is a really cool company. I think the company's name is Game Ball, as well as their product. This is the original Game Ball. They also have a thumb ball mouse. I'm not going to talk about thumb balls. I don't like thumb ball mice. I've talked about it in my other videos, so if you want sort of like flame war with me, you'll have to watch those videos as to why I don't like these kinds of mice. But the main reason is that your thumb is a little bit less accurate, it seems to be. Most people agree with this online, than your index and middle finger for very micro motions. The ball itself is very small, and this kind of motion can lead to thumb RSI, repetitive stress injury. So I don't think that this is quite as ergonomic as some of these offerings. I also don't think you'll get quite the precision as you will with some of these other offerings due to the size of the ball and the fact that you're using your thumb instead of your index and middle finger. But as far as thumb balls go, this is the Logitech MX Ergo, and it's really, really good quality hardware, like a very good device. And Game Ball also has a thumb ball version of their mouse. But this is the finger ball we're looking at. So this is the Game Ball. And it is great. It has dynamic bearings. It's so smooth. One downside is that the ball is very small. Even the Ploopy Adept ball, the Classic and the Adept, these are considered small in terms of trackball mice go. You saw it with the Kensington Slim Blade. That's a much larger ball, and then the Elecom Huge has an even larger ball. This is relatively small, maybe a medium size. This is quite small, the Game Ball. Quite small, and that translates to accuracy. You have to be really like slick on your finger to be able to dial in those tiny motions. It's almost like the equivalent would be having a small mouse pad. You're moving the traditional mouse over and over and over to get the cursor where you want it, as opposed to a larger ball would be like having a large mouse pad with the DPI dialed down low, and you can make these broad sweeping motions. So larger balls give you higher precision. So the Game Ball Con 1 is that it has a small ball. Con 2 is that this is a wrist rest sort of mouse. You're intended to rest your palm upon the device and then maybe have a wrist rest in between. That's intended to be more ergonomic and give you a bit of a rest. But because this is an ambidextrous mouse, it's intended to be used both by left-handers and right-handers. They made it so that it doesn't have the slant. That the slant reduces pronation. And so by being ambidextrous, they cause you to pronate a little bit. Your finger and your thumb come down low onto the device here, and to push the primary and secondary click buttons. And so the wrist and joint ergonomics of the mouse I find to be less ergonomic and also just more awkward. Physically, it's a little bit harder to use this device than the Ploopy Classic, which I think is a lot less awkward. But another con of it is the scroll wheel is a digital scroll wheel. It's not physical. And I don't know if it just takes getting used to, or if there actually is a bit of a delay between when you start scrolling and that getting registered into the system. Maybe there's some firmware or software updates in order, or I think most likely it just takes getting used to. But I find that it's not as snappy. It's not as responsive, I think, than my experience with other mice. So let's talk about the pros. It has a lot of buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the sensor and the bearings are so smooth. This is, in all the lineup of all the mice I've tried, this is the smoothest mouse I've found. A lot of people choose this for their gaming trackball mouse. So I'm going to choose the Adapteer. That's my personal opinion. Just know that a lot of people pick this one. This is a very beloved mouse in the gaming community, the trackball gaming community. And the main reason there is that the bearings and the sensor are just top-notch. Really, really fluid, very precise trackball mouse. So I used this for a while for gaming. I loved it. I didn't really like the ergonomics of it. It just didn't feel as good to me. It didn't feel as, I started to get a little bit of pain in my thumb when I was using this. So Typically, I ended up using this just for gaming, and then I had my Slim Blade for productivity, and then eventually I discovered this, which is kind of best of both worlds. All right, so now let's go to so that's $150. I know, I guess I said that the reason some people don't pick this is it's $150, and so is the Ploopy Classic. So these three here are $150. Okay, Ploopy Classic, this guy right here. This is a really popular trackball mouse. Ploopy is kind of a strange company. They are an open source DIY company. So they intend you to be able to print these parts at home and order sort of anything, any of the accessory. You can order the kit, you can order the ball, you can order any sort of combination of the parts of the mouse, and including the entire package, pre-built. And that's what this is. I ordered it pre-built for $100. Well, it was actually sent to me to review this, hence this video actually. It is 3D printed, and so it's got a bit of a scratchy feel to it. Some people like that. I like it personally. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons, so that's good for gaming. And it is famously ergonomic, very ergonomic. The layout of it is this 45-degree slant of your wrist. It comes with this separate part here, this wedge, to give it even more angle and to prop it up a little bit. And so let's talk about the pros first. Yeah, so it's very ergonomic. The ball is so smooth, and I love that sound. I really like that sound. Some people think that might be too loud. It's got sort of a scratchy sound on those roller bearings. Some people worry that might be too loud, if they're in an office setting or they're streaming. It's no louder than a mechanical keyboard's key clicks. So let's just show you, So I wouldn't worry too much about the sound. I think a lot of people I see who end up buying it were worried about the sound and then find that's not a big deal in practice. So the ergonomics of the device are superb, probably best out there in my opinion. For right-handers. They actually sell a left-hander version as well, but they're not ambidextrous, so you buy one or the other. A fair bit of buttons, a really good dynamic bearings, really good sensor with high polling rate, so really good for very reactive, high-intensity gaming. There is one major flaw, and this is a deal breaker, a total deal breaker. The scroll wheel is very bad. Look at this. So let me show you something what has like a lot of scrolling. You see this? You see how I'm just flicking it and it's just registering like every so often, like maybe 10 to 20% of the amount of scrolling that I'm doing is being registered at all. all. So, but if I slow it down, then all of it gets registered. And the reason for that is that the polling rate on the sensor of the scroll wheel itself is different. It's different hardware than the polling rate of the ball. It's 8 hertz. 8 hertz. You know, some of these ball, like a slim blade polling rate that sort of rules this out for gaming use case is, I think it's 125 hertz. These are like in the thousands. This is 8. So you are not going to scroll. If you're going to be doing a lot of scrolling in your gaming, that scroll wheel is not going to work out for you. And so if you don't do a lot of scrolling in the games that you choose, then that's fine. Or if you can slow yourself down, if you don't need to like move really fast on that scroll wheel, then this will be fine. However, I couldn't even use this for productivity purposes, like in programming, because I find myself when I'm going through code just like scroll, trying to get to the bottom or where I'm looking for in the file and stuff, and it was just slowing me down. So that's a really unfortunate aspect, is that this guy is the Achilles heel of the entire device, and scrolling is pretty important. The device itself is $150, where the same brand's next model here, the Adept, which I'll talk about next, is $75. This is about $100 Canadian dollars. They're a Canadian company. It takes a while to ship, by the way. If you order one of these devices, it takes a while for them to ship it out to you, a week, 2 weeks or so, and because they have to build, they 3D print and then assemble sort of at their HQ, and then they ship it out. Their next device is half the price, and it's got so many other things that make it a bigger win, in my opinion. Okay, before we move on, there is one thing about the Game Ball is this was their first version. They did create a thumball mouse, but I don't think people should be using thumball for gaming personally. You can fight me on that, but I really don't believe in thumball mice. They have a new version coming out. They have a Pro and a 2.0. So this is 1.0. Now, if you look at the layout of I don't know which one this is. There was a Reddit post where they said they're working on it. I think this is the Pro, but evidently it has a larger ball, which is one of the main complaints of the Game Ball. A larger ball, a little bit more of that slanted layout for better ergonomics. They opted for it to be single-handed, like right-handed, which I think was a correct choice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buttons it looks like, unless you can't click in the scroll wheel, I'm not sure. So let's say 6 to be on the safe side. And I think this is a really good choice here. You can see that the scroll wheel on the upcoming Pro or 2.0, whichever one this is vertical rather than horizontal. So you scroll up and down rather than like back and forth. And the back and forth motion of thumb-based scroll wheels is what can contribute to repetitive stress injury on the thumb joint, because you're making large arcs with your thumb. But if you go up and down with the scroll wheel instead, then you're not putting a lot of strain on that joint. So I think they're making some really good choices with this upcoming version. I don't know when this is coming out. I don't plan on it anytime soon, but if you've got time to wait and before you decide to buy a trackball, maybe keep an eye on this and get this one. I have a feeling it's going to be the winner in this whole lineup. If you don't have time to wait, then go with the Ploopy Adept, in my opinion. All right, so that finally brings us to the Adept. Why do I pick the Adept? Now, one is it has a lot of buttons. You see 6 here, but there's only 5, because one of the buttons, you see how you don't see a scroll wheel on this device? One of the buttons is dedicated to, you hold it down, and that's how you scroll. So this scroll is so snappy. You can throw it, you can make large motions. It has the polling rate of the scroll mechanism is tied to the sensor of the ball itself. So you have very high refresh rate on the polling, so it's very responsive. It activates immediately, unlike my experience with the digital sensor of the Game Ball. Activates immediately. You can throw it. It's so responsive. So this is my favorite scrolling out of all of them by a long shot. The ball itself is so smooth. It's nice and heavy. The dynamic bearings, you'll never have to deal with stiction. You won't have to clean these out very frequently. You're going to get very high precision and fluidity. Now, this is ambidextrous, meaning you can I'm only using 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons. I'm only using 4 buttons for my daily driver. Left click, right click, middle click, and back. And one of the buttons is dedicated instead, the way you map the buttons, this is another cool feature of the Adept and the Ploopy Classic, is you go to via.app, and it's a website, it's a web app that you connect to, and then you assign the buttons. And I have one of the buttons is TG1. And and what that does is it toggles a different layer or a different profile. So I have right-handed mode, and now if I click this button, everything is mirrored to the other side. Now it's left-handed mode. And so what I do is I use this for work with my left hand because my right hand has most of the RSI from a whole lifetime of programming. So I use the trackball on the left side, left-handedly, for my daily driver for work. But because I'm so used to using my right hand, since it's my dominant hand, when I game, then I push this button and I'm back into right-handed mode, and now I can game with my right hand. And then you can have it either on the right side or the left side, or some people like to, here's a split mechanical keyboard, put it into the middle, between the two splits, the two halves of a split keyboard. So you have a lot of options there. So that ambidextrous nature of these wedge trackball mice is really ergonomic in the sense that you get to free up the other hand and sort of distribute the load between your two hands. There is one more thing about this that is really interesting, and I haven't seen anybody talk about this, and I think this is such an important factor when it comes to choosing a mouse for gaming, a trackball mouse. It's best to use these wedge mice hover hand, like Saruman over the Palantir. So some people do use a wrist rest, but I discourage that. I encourage hovering your hand over the mouse with your sort of fingers touching the buttons and the ball. And I think that's, from my own experience, I do have RSI, therefore, I should be one to talk, that is more ergonomic. I experience less pain when I use these hover hand style mice rather than resting my wrist down on these mice. I believe that resting your palm and your wrist down is applying pressure onto the palm, stress, and that will build up and can be less ergonomic with time. Whereas hover is like you're in the air, you're floating. It's nice and there's no pressure. Now, that's for ergonomics. Hover hand, I think, is better for you. We can discuss that in the comments. Some people think that's not true. I don't know if there's been any studies, but I and a lot of people I've seen online say that hover hand is more ergonomic. But not only is it more ergonomic, but there's something that is so hard to explain until you experience it. When my palm is down here on the palm rest of the ball, and I click this button with my thumb, and my finger is on the trackball trying to move the mouse, the transfer of the click through my joints to my whole hand gets transmitted into my finger. And so, I guess, exacerbated by my palm being pushed down. So when I click, a micro motion happens in the cursor itself. And when I move the mouse, a little bit of motion is happening in my thumb. And I've read that people who first buy a trackball mouse say, "Hey, I'm having trouble when I try to click and drag, or if I'm clicking in a game that I'm accidentally moving the cursor way too much." And people will respond and say, "You'll just get used to it. It's actually just part of the experience. It'll go away and you'll adapt." But be that as it may, a hover hand device eliminates that issue. The lack of a downward pressure of the palm on the device reduces the amount of transfer from thumb to finger and finger to thumb. And so when you click, there's a lot less transfer of that energy into the mouse itself. So I find that using the Ploopy Adept for gaming results in significantly less accidental motion of the cursor, and it just feels more clean, more crisp. It takes less getting used to. Even though the layout of this is quite unusual, is very different than what you're used to coming from a traditional mouse. You adapt to the layout quite fast. You get used to it really easily. that layout not only gives you better ergonomics, in my opinion, because of the hover hand, better ambidextrousness so that you can distribute the load between your hands, but it also gives you better precision, a cleaner precision, because there's less energy transfer from thumb to middle or index finger. Okay, now let's go ahead and try a game. And I'm going to use all 3 mice. Now, do note that I use this the most, so very obviously I will be better.
Amadeus the Wizard was not.
Now, I chose this game because I'm at a part in the game where if I scroll and I activate this little guy, so I'm just going to put it down real quick. Now, if I roll this round and it rotates, I think scrolling is a really good litmus test in a lot of this. So let's try it with the game ball. I'm going to activate it, and I'm going to scroll. It feels pretty good. It does feel a little bit like there's maybe a micro delay in my experience there. And then let's try to scroll it with the app. First off, this is interesting. I hadn't actually tried this yet. See, my thumb is on the click button. I need that thumb for the scroll button. So I wonder if there would have been a better design choice if they had used maybe your ring finger or your pinky finger. So let's just do that thing. It's just all over the place. Even like slow motion is not quite. And yeah, just resting my palm here with my thumb way down low just feels a little painful. Something to shoot. There we go. Okay. Felt really good. Really easy to control. I mean, I know this isn't like the best choice of game to showcase this. I don't play first-person shooters. A lot of games I play.
Talisman. Did you find a mouse?
Okay,
So, I'm not alone in the library.
So this takes, like, you gotta use the scroll wheel to go up and down on there, and use the right click, and you can shoot. So let's try this on these mice. That felt really good on the Ploopy Adept. So the right button is the pinky on the top here on the game ball, and then we're gonna scroll up. I don't know, maybe I'm being a little too picky on the responsiveness of the scroll wheel of the game ball. It's not actually, it hasn't really felt that bad now that I'm showcasing it. Let's try Classic. This is interesting. I never noticed that the thumb being both click and scroll could cause some issues for gaming. I don't know that. I don't think I would recommend the Classic for gaming. I think it's really between these two. I think these are the. So I would say if you want a more traditional gaming mouse experience, then the Game Ball would be the right one for you. And if you're willing to be a little bit more experimental, which I think would give you better ergonomics and better precision, then I would go with the Ploopy Adept. Also, the Ploopy Adept is half the cost. It's $75. And I think this is just overall a better device. I just think it's good for daily driver work. You can go left-handed and do your programming work, and it feels really nice. It's cool that it's programmable using that Use Via app that I showed you, where you can map the keys. It gets programmed onto the device itself. So if you program the key, if you have to take this to work and you can't use third-party software at work, for example, you could map the keys to your liking at home and then take it to work, and the key mapping will remain. And I just think that the Ploopy Classic would be fantastic if it weren't for the low responsiveness of that scroll wheel. All right, so Elecom Huge, very cheap, $40. If you want something that's really popular, sort of tried and true, and you are a DIY kind of person who's willing to take this apart, watch some YouTube videos on how to do that and replace the bearings, this could work out for you. if you're a MMO RPG player, this has the highest number of buttons of the lineup, 8 buttons. So I think this is a good entry point for people who just want to get started and they don't want to break the bank and they don't want to experiment too much, but do know that you're going to need to replace the bearings. So if you just want something that works out of the box, I would not get the Elecom Huge. That's my least pick in this lineup. The L-Trac is the next least pick only because of the number of buttons being 2 is pretty limiting, especially for gaming, which is unfortunate because the bearings and the sensor and the refresh rate and all that evidently are unbeatable, top-notch amongst trackball mice. Best in the lineup from what I understand. Next one is Game Ball. That's a fantastic gaming mouse. I highly recommend it. There are some quirks to be aware of. I don't think it's quite as ergonomic. I don't like the small trackball ball size itself, but it is so smooth that compensates for the ball size. But I don't like the ergonomics nearly as much as the next two, which are the Classic and the Adept. The Classic is perfect except for that freaking scroll wheel. It's a showstopper for me. I can't get past it. I can't really adapt to that scroll wheel. And so that leaves us with the Adept, which just has so many freaking perks to it. I think it's more ergonomic. I think it is better precision due to the hover hand. The ambidextrous nature allows you to experiment. It's very cheap. It's besides the Huge, it's the least expensive of the lineup, which is kind of wild to me. And it's just really, really accurate and smooth. And then in the meantime, keep your eye out for the next Game Ball, which I believe I think it's going to be later this year possibly, but I think that it's going to take the cake. I think that this company really knows what they're doing. They've iterated a lot now and they've learned a lot of lessons, and it looks to be more ergonomic with a bigger ball, and so you're going to get a lot of those precision gains, but without any of the cons.